Thank you for everybody for joining us today for our webinar. We have a panel of some great people. A few housekeeping notes to keep your lines muted. If when you do ask questions through the chat feature, to make sure you ask them to everyone so that we can all see it, and we will make sure to answer that at the end. I'm going to turn this over to John Longstreet for an introduction, and then Ben Fletcher is going to help with moderating this group of panelists.
Thank you, Hope, and thank you all for joining us today. This is, to me, a very important panel, and I'm excited that you've decided to tune in today. Pennsylvania began opening last couple of weeks ago in the green phase in many counties. There'll be about 50 counties open as of tomorrow out of the 67 in green, and all of the counties, with the exception of Philadelphia, open for outdoor dining in yellow last Friday. And what's important about this is there's certain things that you should take into account as you get ready to open. And maybe one of the most important, beyond safety of guests and employees, of course, is number one, but is that you can, if you do it smart, you can make most out of green. We've had reports from all over the state of restaurants that have opened in green and are actually doing sales that exceeded the sales they were doing in the same time period when they were operating at 100%. The reason that's important is because it may be a while before we get back to 100%. And even in Texas, where they're going to 75% capacity, we're at 50% in green right now, next Friday, the reality of it is it's not going to make a difference because they still have 6-foot social distancing. And if you run the calculations, 6-foot social distancing, and we've set up restaurants way, runs about 50% of fire code capacity. So what you have to do is figure out new ways to operate in order to maximize the potential. Today's panel is designed for one reason, to do that, and also to give you some good supplier tips in getting ready to reopen from a standpoint of supply chain, and also from a standpoint of sanitation and making sure that you do everything to protect your guests. So consequently, we've assembled a panel today and folks can address all of these areas. One of the restaurant operators who's operated very well in green and in yellow thus far is Lehigh Valley Restaurant Group, a Red Robin franchisee. We have with us, in fact, the largest Red Robin franchisee in the country, based in Pennsylvania. We have with us the president and CEO of Lehigh Valley Restaurant Group, Mike Axiotis, and also with him, his director of operations, TJ Arrowood. In fact, I visited one of TJ's restaurants on the first weekend they were open, and they were doing a very brisk business, and the guests and the employees were thrilled by the way it was being handled. So they have some good stories to tell there. We also have with us one of our platinum sponsors for PRLA, also one of the foremost experts in supply chain in Pennsylvania, president of Sysco Central Pennsylvania, Ralph Freije, and also his right-hand man, Phil Raymon. We also have with us from our terrific partner and a name that we all know in this industry. I always say that it was one of the first things I said as a baby was Economics Lab, because we know it so well. We now call it EcoLab. And we have with us Evan Zampatti from EcoLab to talk about some of the sanitation concerns and also supplies in that regard. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Ben Fletcher, who's Director of Operations and Strategy for Philadelphia and Eastern Pennsylvania for PRLA, to get the panel going. And panelists, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And attendees, thank you for tuning in. Ben, it's all yours.
Hey, thanks so much, John. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Let's just jump right into it. As an operator for many years myself, I know the first thing I needed to do before I opened up was to make sure everything was clean and sanitized. So I want to start off with Evan from EcoLab. And Evan, maybe you can share with us some tips and tricks that can help some of our members and some of our restaurant operators from here along as we begin to reopen in the yellow, as we begin outdoor dining, and as we begin indoor dining.
Absolutely, Ben. Well, good afternoon to everyone on the line. Number one, I'd like to start off by thanking the PRLA for the opportunity to speak to the not only alongside this group of professional panelists, but also the attendees for the industry. My name is Evan Zampatti. I'm a senior corporate account manager with EcoLab, supporting our institutional division, which is stride with the hospitality market and industry. I've worked in a number of marketplaces such as Las Vegas, Nevada, with some high clientele in the casino industry and lodging sector, as well as the San Diego, California marketplace, and excited to be back in my home state of Pennsylvania to support the hospitality industry. As we know, a global pandemic, right, has brought a lot of concerns and a lot of focus around cleaning, sanitation, disinfection for the industry in terms of infection prevention. So there are so many, complex topics that we've never really thought about, never really asked the questions, and for the most part, right, took for granted at times pre-COVID. As we, our guests and travel, and as we enjoy these fine restaurants, I know myself, even prior to EcoLab, you took for granted a hot, well-tasting meal, a great experience, and sometimes you didn't question that level of sanitation and disinfection. Well, I think we can all agree, most relevant to the COVID pandemic, it has really increased awareness. And starting out there, Ben, I know there are so many resources right now. We have so many business partners that are asking the right questions, and I probe the industry to continue to ask, to continue to rely on your vendors, whether that's EcoLab or another company, for that true expertise in infection prevention, as John had mentioned earlier, right? Our goal is to safeguard not only our employees, but our guests, and get back to the new normal of great restaurant and lodging experiences. So starting off this first slide, as mentioned before, there's a great partnership with the PRLA in terms of broadcasting educational material on these topics. A number of webinars pre-recorded that are hosted on their sites. So it truly is a topic that could be talked about for hours and hours. And as we get into the different sectors of whether it's restaurants, lodging, acute care, etc. So I wanted to take time today to put together just a few high-level overview slides as we refresh and get excited for resuming operation. So the first one, again, it may be some repeated information, as I know a lot of the audience has been glued to the webinars and participation of all the educational materials, but personal hygiene, not only for, again, our staff, but with our guests in mind. And I think when it comes to cleaner, safer, healthier environments, it comes down to having the right process, having the right solutions, but most importantly, where we can help is having the right knowledge and training to go along with the execution. One thing we've learned a lot, again, are just an increased focus and engagement from our business partners to say, hey, am I using the right product? Am I using the right disinfectant? Am I using it on the right surface, etc. So as we get back to what, is going to be the new norm that we're anticipating, personal hygiene is a huge, tremendous focus. Hand washing frequency is probably one of the best things for mitigation of risk. I would highly recommend an antibacterial soap with that foundation principle of even hand washing. There is a proper procedure to wash your hands correctly. Some people may have been guilty of, prior to this, just a quick rinse, a little bit of soap, but we really want to stress that importance of the 20-second proper procedure, hand washing, and an increased frequency of that, surround the high touch point areas, interaction with people, pre and post prepping of food, washing dishes, etc. As we kind of move into the category 2, it's minimizing that close contact. So I know everyone on the line is fully engaged with the CDC guidelines alongside Governor Wolf's recommendations for reopening. So again, that social distancing piece is extremely important, as we know that transmission of the virus is more from person to person, more so off of physical surfaces. Thirdly, ensuring the right PPE, that becomes the new heightened focus. Not to say that it wasn't important prior to COVID, but obviously with the implementation around gloves, masks, etc., a really heightened focus. So my biggest recommendation, again, it goes back to having that right call to action, having the right solutions, having the right vendors to source those to keep our staff safe. And then as we pair that with the, math equation here, it's keeping the environment and our operations hygienically clean, sanitized, and disinfected. So that's, again, having the right products and having the education for the right application. A hot button right now, and we'll get into it, is disinfection. And what I would high-levelly recommend that whether it's an EcoLab product or another vendor's, there are different classifications of those products. And most important to note is really that dwell time of the recommended label instructions of where it's affected around norovirus or COVID. So it's really educating yourself, educating your staff that you're implementing the right procedures. So if we could go to the next slide, that'd be great. So I wanted to share this slide because it really highlights all sectors of the hospitality industry. The common theme right now is high touch point areas, and where I thought this was a great slide is it really calls out and highlights some of those areas that we would maybe typically miss, whether it is a hotel room, a public area, a lobby for, the lodging sector, or even your restaurants where you welcome your guests. This is a great area that just highlights, but is not limited to, those high touch point areas where you would want to use a disinfectant approved by the EPA for infection prevention and risk mitigation. And I really like this slide because, again, it just brings that call to action to say, hey, maybe there's something on here that is a high touch point area that I never really thought of cleaning or disinfecting prior to COVID. So as Ben, what you had asked, what are the tips and tricks? I think the biggest thing is the increased frequency of a comprehensive program. Again, having the right materials, solutions, training to execute. But really, it's that increased frequency. And what I would really like to highlight is just the increased awareness and the engagement of everyone on the line, right? From a standpoint, this is an effort that we work stride and stride with the hospitality industry, as well as the community, right? At the end of the day, we're offering those great guest experiences to our community and our families, and we want to keep them safe along the way. So not to say this category, it was extremely important and forever will be, but it really feels good to have everybody's engagement and increased efforts towards providing that place of safety. If we can transition to the third slide. This was another great one as we get highlighted questions regularly, the difference between cleaning, sanitizing, and disinfecting. It can become a complex topic, and it really circles back to just having that basic 101 knowledge that I think was truly sometimes taken for granted prior to the COVID situation. So not to get too in depth on this topic, but I think this is a great visual to, as you resume operation, really just start asking the questions proactively to say, am I partnered with the right company? Do I have the right solutions in place? And is my staff properly trained? I think the new norm for the hospitality industry may see new employees for their brands, right? So this is something we can partner with you. And again, if it's another vendor, really lean on them to train that expertise to the staff members. But to start, cleaners, there are things out there that are your general cleaner, which aids and removes the physical soils from the surface. So whether that's a tabletop, a countertop, you name the surface, it's actually the cleaning and removal of soils. And then we transition into a sanitizer. So a sanitizer reduces the number of active bacteria in the environment, but it just does not destroy all bacteria. And that's a key piece to note because this is where the true difference becomes sanitation versus disinfection and around the viral claim of norovirus. So again, prior to the awareness of COVID, you heard the word sanitizer and felt great about it. well, the transition really has been a heightened awareness and engagement in the disinfecting categories, as those products and solutions have the viral claims against norovirus, in specific the COVID-19, which inactivates all bacteria and all viruses. So again, a key piece to highlight there is don't take anything for assumption or for granted. Question if you're not sure, raise your hand, be vocal. There's so many resources out there right now to support these topics. But just because you hand one of your staff members a bottle of disinfectant to go out and disinfect, whether it's a kitchen or hotel, doesn't necessarily mean they know what they're doing. They have the right skills in place to do it properly. And what I highlighted earlier in the conversation was around the significance around the dwell time of that disinfectant product. You know, I could speak in terms of EcoLab products with high-speed disinfection around norovirus with a 45-second kill claim, compared to some properties on the market that offer solutions that would take 10 minutes of a dwell time on that surface to truly disinfect against norovirus. So that's a big difference. If, again, I have a bottle, I think I'm disinfecting, I wipe it down really quickly and clean up the soil or area, and I'm assuming it's disinfected because I'm using a disinfected labeled product. But if I'm not following the proper procedures and instructions, I may be very counterproductive on that process. So I challenge everyone on the line, if you are not in tune with the differences here, if you're not sure if you're using the right program, the right product, really lean on your supplier for that expertise. And to wrap up here is slide 4, if we could go on. I think this is just a great slide that highlights some tools, solutions, and tactics that we're being asked by our business partners. And at the end of the day, it's creating that assurance of safety. I think more than ever, visibility of a clean, safe, healthy environment is more important than ever right now. So you have everything from whether it's a guest check-in to a hotel room or greeting your guests at your restaurant establishment. It's being vocal. It's providing the information of what you're doing to combat the virus, the procedures you're taking, the heightened awareness. As you can see in that first column, it's really going digital where possible to limit those touch point areas. Again, transitioning to 2 is social distance and PPE signage, right? More important than ever. And what I can say from an EcoLab perspective is we are innovating with the changing times. So we really take our business partners, the community's information to this new norm and create solutions around that. And that kind of coexists with the 4th column there of communicating those new standards. So labels to put on things within your operation to show, hey, this item has been sanitized, this item has been disinfected. It really gives that assurance to your guests to know the property is taking the right procedures, has the right protocols in place, has the right training, because I think now more than ever, perception becomes reality a little bit. So increasing that visibility of what you're doing within the operation, even again here on the 3rd column, signaling cleaning when they see your staff members actively cleaning, having the right tools, merchandising those efforts. I know I can speak for myself, that really rests, you know, for lack of a better term, rest assures me that I can bring my family into an establishment, have a safe, healthy experience, and you know, look forward to the new normalization. But these are some key things that I would highlight that can be implemented within an operation, again, to really safeguard those employees and guests coming into the properties.
That's great. Thank you so much, Evan. It's funny, I stepped into an elevator today and there was a signage that said, you know, it was very comforting to me because it said, you know, only 2 people on an elevator, and there was a lot of people waiting for the elevator, and there was no confusion. We knew exactly what we had to do until we stepped in the elevator and it said, please face the opposite way. So we all spun around, but then it said, please face the opposite way. So we all spun around. So we're going to go up a few floors. All right, so great. So we have our places clean now and sanitized. And now it's time to get the food in there, and now it's time to get the ordering, and now it's time to get back to biz. So luckily with us we have Ralph and Phil from Sysco Central PA. Thank you for joining us again. I don't know who would like to start, but floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you, Ben. And thank you for everybody on this webinar for allowing us to be part of the day. But the first thing that we wanted to talk about, Bill, I think we're echoing. Maybe mute and unmute. Sorry about that. So from a vendor standpoint, we wanted to talk about the 10 biggest opportunities that we think that we could discuss with you today that we see as an opportunity before you open. And we've listed them. If you could advance to the next slide, please. Kind of here they are. And what we're going to be talking about today too is not just the opportunities, but we'll talk about some of the resources that are available, not just from Sysco, but from a lot of other food service vendors. And everything that we talk about today is, Phil will touch on it at the end, is located on a website that is available to the public. So anyways, we start off by, sanitation, which, Evan did a great job talking about the whole program. I think that, from what we see, I mean, your customers are going to be looking for more confidence than ever before. So some of the things, and I'm not going to talk about some of the generic things that, we've seen, such as, masks and shields and sanitizer perhaps, but maybe some of the other things that, you're not thinking about that you could touch upon. If you could advance to the next slide, please, Ben. Sanitizer has become a real big concern. It's right at the height of the pandemic, it was really, really hard to find. As Evan mentioned too, kind of same thing with, production issues and trying to find it. But, we found some dispensers out there that, on the first picture there, the white, which will hold any bottle that's, available. Small bottles, big bottles. You can use one bottle and pour any sanitizer into it. But, obviously to make sure that you have these around your facility, so those high touch areas is important. And if you can't find them, they are out there. I know a lot of you have been doing takeout programs, which everybody's been doing such an incredible job. But there are also some products out there that I'm not sure if you're aware of that there's products out there that really, really have advanced on takeout, such as keeping French fries crisp for up to 30, 40 minutes. Wow. Things such as stirrers. And these are all things that we've done in our building as well. You've all seen the wooden wrap stirrers. They can be a little expensive, but there are plastic ones out there that are available. And one of the biggest things that, I've changed in our building is plasticware. A lot of folks use cutlery kits that are wrapped, but what happens when you just need a fork or a spoon, for outdoor dining or for ice cream or whatever? There's new dispensers out there, both for low volume and high volume. And I got them kind of pictured here where they're actually wrapped and you can grab them and it's all touch free. So some really, really neat systems out there. And I know my associates here have enjoyed it. But there's a lot more, but I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that other than just, typically cleaning programs, what are the other things that we could be doing to ensure the confidence and safety of our associates and, the customers as well? So Phil, I'm going to...
If you can advance there, Ben, thank you. So the second thing we wanted to highlight is that the conversation with your vendor. So typically in normal times pre-COVID, our restaurateurs and hotels would place their order 1 or 2 days before they would receive their order. Well, things are a little bit different when you're reopening. You want to give yourselves plenty of lead time. You want to discuss things like product availability. You want to take a look at your order guide. You want to make sure your account is active. If you can go to the next slide, Ben. Vendors have tools available. This is just a snapshot of ours. It's called Portal. all the customers' information is stored here, whether or not the account is active, the items are in stock. Our sales associates have access to this, as do other vendors. It's all available in one snapshot. We wanted to highlight the importance of not waiting to have this conversation, to get ahead of it, and to have it sooner, as soon as you possibly can, to stay ahead of the potential pitfalls. You want to go on to the next one, Ben?
And pardon me, just real quick. Ralph, would you mind muting your screen? I think we're getting some.
Say that again?
Would you mind muting your, there we go. Thank you.
So can you hear me okay, Ben? Is that better? All right, cool. So the next thing we wanted to talk about is staffing and operational costs. So this is something that we want our restaurateurs and hotels to consider. Volumes are going to be different. We feel that volume is going to be spread out more throughout the week instead of Friday and Saturday being the two massively busy days that they typically were. Volumes are going to fluctuate and change. And you have to consider that. And you have to know what staff to have on and when. And if you go on to the next slide, Ben, there are tools available out there that can help you make this decision and manage it. This is just a snapshot of one of them. It's called a break-even calculator. We have a labor calculator as well. These are also available online, P&L calculators, things of that nature. But make sure you're considering that. Volumes are going to be different. How much staff do I need and when do I need it? You're going to the next one, Ben.
So at this point, you on mute, Phil?
Oh, sorry.
At this point, we're at the point of taking a look at our menu. And, before I talk about the menu, I'd like to talk about the supply chain. For those of you who have been able to remain open for a takeout or even now at outdoor dining, you might notice a lot of product unavailability products out there in the market. And I think that I know that I've been asked many a times, is it us here at Sysco that is not managing inventory properly? And that's not it at all. Actually, it's due to social distancing, a lot of the manufacturers only can have a percentage of the employees that they used to have. So what a lot of them have done is, I'll give you an example, say such as a soup company, they might have had 25 different varieties of soup, but now due to the lack of associates working in the factory, they've cut down the variety so that they can streamline, say, maybe 15 main products. And that's what they're doing now, just to kind of continue to make sure that, soup is coming out of the company. So that's happening across the world, and supply has become very, very tight, very high in demand on some things. So as you create your menu and get ready to open, I think what I'm trying to suggest is that, you streamline the ingredients, make sure that the ingredients can be used in many different places, make sure that they're available, make sure that even if they're available today, they might be unavailable tomorrow. So what else can you use? Is there a plan B? And can that menu be flexible and adaptable? Which kind of leads right into the next bullet point, which is menu costing. And I'm going to turn that over to Phil to talk about that.
Yeah, so menu costing is vital. Price fluctuations have been massive throughout COVID. I'll just give you an example. Ground beef pre-COVID was in the $2 a pound range, and now it's upwards of $6 a pound. So if you can go to the next slide, Ben, I'm going to talk more about analyzing your menu. So if you had an item on your menu where you used ground beef, say it's a burger or chili, your food cost is going to be higher because the cost of that ingredient is much higher. So the example that I'm showing here, this is a tool called Menu Analysis. And again, most vendors have this out there, or you might have a tool yourself that does this. But the example here, this is pre-COVID. This item cost $3.01 per serving. All the ingredients combined were $3 and a penny. Now, this item costs $4.57. So unless you adjust your menu price accordingly, your food cost is going to increase drastically and your profit's going to decrease. So it's really important to make sure you're analyzing your menu fully to make sure the costs are in line and your menu pricing is in line.
Thanks, Phil. So now we've taken a look, we've streamlined our menu, and now's a chance to take a look at you know, what our new inventory might look like. You might have chosen to go from number 10 can ketchup to individual ketchup packets. One thing I kind of laugh about here at Sysco is pre-COVID, we were selling about 60 to 70 cases of just little pepper packets. And now we're up to 250 cases. And all we're doing is outdoor dining. We haven't moved entirely into the green phase yet, or even 100%. So obviously, people are going to more of individual type of packets instead of tabletop features. So I think the main point here is to take a look at what your new inventory looks like and communicate it to your vendor as soon as possible. Make sure that there's supply out there, make sure that they can accommodate you, and obviously that'll make sure you have the best opportunity of succeeding once you open your door and you have the supplies that you need.
Hey, Ben, if you can move to the next slide. We wanted to show this slide as a representation of the importance of having an inventory system in place. I mentioned costs when I was talking about the menu. You want to have your costs in line as much as you possibly can, and a solid inventory system is one of the great ways to do that. We have a mobile inventory app, which we're showing here, but people can use Excel sheets. I mean, there's inventory sheets available online. But now is a really good time to make sure that you have a solid inventory program in place to help manage your costs better. Over to the next point, Ben, if you could. Oh, sorry, this is Ralph. I think this is you to talk about marketing and social media.
Well, thanks, Phil. So one of the things we're seeing is that I think pre-COVID, a lot of folks would go to customers' websites to evaluate, you know, where they're going, evaluate the new venture that they're going to go on, check out the menu, check out the events that are happening. And what we're seeing now is that people have reverted to social media, even more so than pre-COVID. And if you have an opportunity, or if to get more vocal, more posted on social media, I think that's so important, because the customers want to feel the confidence, and they want to feel that you're reaching out to them more now than ever. Even if they were loyal customers for years and years, it's a new restaurant or a new hotel they're going to be walking into, and they expect to see change, and they'd like to know about it in advance and to see what other people are saying. So Phil will share some fun facts with you here.
So on the next slide, Ben, before I dive into this slide, I want to share a stat with you. It's actually a stock, and today might not be the best day to share this because the market's having a rough day. But on March 16th, Facebook stock was trading at $146.96. And today it's trading at $226.84. It's probably a little bit lower now with the way the market went. But the reason for that drastic increase is their viewership, their engagement doubled during COVID. People were glued to their devices. They were glued to social media. It's become even more important than it was pre-COVID to make sure your social media is properly set up, properly aligned. This is just an example. Instagram and Facebook, I mentioned Facebook earlier because they actually own Instagram, and Instagram and Facebook are the two most prevalent social media platforms, especially in our industry. People will go to these first now to learn more about your restaurant. To piggyback off what Evan was saying earlier, you might want to share your sanitation story on your social media. I think that's a good practice. Talk about what you're doing to keep your facility clean and safe. Again, this is just a snapshot of an Instagram business page. I think sometimes some of our customers make the mistake of opening up a personal Facebook account or a personal Instagram account. You want to make sure you have a business page set up. And to reemphasize what Ralph said, try to engage followers and try to build on your follower base. This is such a critical tool. It was before, and it's even more so now.
So here we are, we're almost about ready to open. And the next thing is, staff readiness and training. Certainly a lot of different protocols, a lot of different policies that need to be enhanced and elevated, such as Evan said. One of the things that clearly sticks out to me is, the host or hostess. As the person re-enters your establishment, they're looking to see changes, they're looking to see enhancements, and the first perception they have is the person that greets them. They are running the restaurant, and they're obviously setting a tone more than they ever have before. So making sure that everybody is properly, trained on, which way the new policies are, the new sanitation programs are. I think customers are going to be looking for that more so than ever to make sure that, the people have been properly staffed and trained.
So this is just a snapshot of our webinar calendar. You guys, obviously we have a great webinar resource here with the PRLA. We practice what we preach. We spend a lot of time training our associates on all these things that we're talking about here. These are available to anybody on the call. You don't have to be a Sysco customer. This calendar is available on the website that I'm going to mention as I close. But just wanted to point out that we're spending a lot of time training. That it's so important right now as the industry changes, that we're training our associates and that our restaurateurs are training their staffs as well. Ben, if you want to go on to the next slide. So the last thing that I want to talk about before I close with our website is the physical menu discussion. This has been a hot topic, and probably one of the hottest topics that we've had in discussions with our customers is, what is your physical menu going to look like? Are you going to stick with the old reusable menu, the one that now you're going to have to wipe down after every use? We're seeing a lot of customers gravitate to a disposable menu or even to a QR code. This site here that Ben has, we have a marketing services department, a menu services department down at our corporate office. They will create a takeout menu, a curbside menu, any type of reusable menu that you want, free of charge for anybody. And the turnaround time is about 2 to 3 days. A thing that's become more and more popular is a QR code. We're seeing a lot of restaurants go to having a QR code available at the hostess stand or on a table tent where their patrons can scan the QR code and view the menu right there on their site. I wanted to highlight too, when we talked about social media, the importance of having your menu linked to your social media platforms. I forgot to mention that when we were talking, but QR codes, disposable menus. Are you going to use the reusable menu that you used in the past? This is a big topic that you need to make a decision on before we open up and go green. So I just want to close with, if you go to the next slide, Ben, and actually go one more too, if you could. This is a website called foodie.sysco.com. A lot of what we have talked about here, Ralph and I, is available on here, the webinar calendar. There's a COVID-19 recovery resources tab there. This is open to anybody. It's a public website, and it's been a big help to a lot of our restaurateurs and hotels. Feel free to go on there and browse, but a lot of what we had discussed here is in this site in more depth. So if you're interested in learning more about what we talked about, this is a great starting point where you can reach out to one of us, and we're happy to help. So that's all I have. I really wanted to thank everybody, the panelists and the PRLA, for having us, and all the attendees. It was a great opportunity. We're happy to share anything that we can to help.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Ralph. You guys, that was really fantastic. Next up, we have Mike and TJ from Red Robin from Lehigh Valley Restaurant Group. And I just want to ask TJ and Mike, you may talk about this, but if you don't, if you could touch on this, because Phil and Ralph had mentioned that, some of their food products, are going to be more expensive, and you're going to have to charge guests more for, you're going to raise your menu prices. Could you talk, and again, you might be talking about this already, but can you talk about how you are going to explain this to your guests, or what's the best way to get this across to your guests without coming across, if they see big jumps, how are you going to be explaining that? But again, so we have Mike and TJ. I think TJ, you're going to kick it off.
Yeah, Ben, thank you for that introduction. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So yeah, we will talk about menu and some of that throughout both of our presentations, I'm sure. I'm going to kind of start off with what's the best way to start as soon as you get the word that you're going to go green, or as soon as you get the word that you're going to be able to reopen. For us, the biggest thing has been keeping communication open and honest with all of our team members throughout this process. We have been open for takeout only, and we have been open for all off-premise as far as takeout, delivery, third-party delivery. So we have had the advantage of being able to keep in touch with our team members and keep the engagement with them. Now that we're at yellow, we're doing a lot of outdoor dining, and we do have a restaurant in green, and we're taking 3 more restaurants to green tomorrow. So the biggest thing is, as soon as you find out that you're going green, and even before then, let your team know what the plan is, what they should expect, what that looks like. Schedule some sort of meeting, training. Your restaurants are currently empty, so you can certainly get all your team together to train them on new safety and sanitation procedures, and properly do it with proper social distancing. I would really utilize the PA Restaurant Promise for that. Make sure that you're upholding those standards. That way you can post that. Definitely gives our guests a peace of mind, and it definitely keeps the team members with health and safety at the top of their mind at all times as well. Make your reopening a big deal. Use it as an opportunity to reintroduce yourself to the community, reestablish standards with your team, establish new standards with your team. Make it fun for your team. They are all going to be excited to come back to work. I know there has been a lot of worry and a lot of concern around people that are on unemployment not wanting to come off of unemployment. The PRLA has some great resources for that on their website, on what you can do to let unemployment know that you have hours available for people that may choose to do that. But we are finding that that is less and less as this goes on more and more. People generally speaking want to work for the most part. Health, safety, and sanitation are certainly top of mind all the time. Most of us have all had great health and safety and sanitation procedures prior to COVID, but it's definitely completely different ballgame once you reopen and you have your guests in the building, you have your guests outside of the building doing outdoor dining, and optics are critical. You want your guests to feel safe, and that's really what the guests are looking for. They're looking to feel safe. What we're finding is the guests that are coming out are comfortable coming out, but giving them that extra peace of mind to see your team members all wearing the proper PPE, wearing gloves, sanitizing tables. Don't be afraid to sanitize and do all of those things directly in front of the guests. They want to see that extra person on every single shift, walking around the restaurant, sanitizing touch points. And there's nothing wrong with that. Prior to this, we kind of did those things. We wouldn't want a guest to walk up to a table as you're bussing it or cleaning it off. You would kind of want to present them that table ready to go. But it's a great practice to go ahead and just do a final wipe down, a final sanitization with whatever chemicals you're using right in front of the guest. So that way they see that and it gives them that peace of mind. As far as, I know John touched on it in his introduction, being successful in green and driving sales and looking at 6 feet social distancing and looking at your occupancy rates and looking at what 50% really looks like. Look at your floor plans, look at your building plans so you know where you're at and what your occupancy is as far as the code is concerned. That's typically going to be more than what your seats are in your restaurant. And when you look at that number and 50%, and then you look at your restaurant, think outside of the box. Don't think, oh, we can just close every other table and we're good to go. No, are there other places in your restaurant that you utilized for things that weren't driving revenue prior? Are there areas in your front of the house that are, able, ready to be set up for guests to sit at? You can't have people waiting in your lobby. They need to wait outside. So can you utilize part of your lobby to seat guests and capture more revenue? In addition to that, be innovative with your exterior seating. The same social distancing guidelines apply to that, but you can be very innovative with that, especially now that you can apply to expand your liquor license capabilities outside of your building. And don't discount off-premise. a lot of us have been very successful with off-premise, and I know a lot of you have basically been able to maintain and stay afloat through the past 12, 13, 14 weeks because you've increased your off-premise sales by a significant amount, whether it's through third-party delivery, carry out, or delivering yourself. Those sales will slowly go away a little bit as you first reopen, but they will be more than they were before. So continue to make that a priority to make up for the difference that you might lose in seating or with 50% occupancy. Simplification, make your menu as simple as possible, adjust accordingly. Don't go crazy with adding new things or adding more difficult things. Make sure that your team is in a position where they can execute very easily. It's one key fact that will help, especially as they have extra steps as far as safety and sanitation is concerned. There's definitely fluctuations, like Ben had mentioned, in costs. And yes, you might need to take some price on certain menu items because of that. What we've experienced is not very many guests notice. And I think if you do it right on the right items, you can kind of get around any sort of issues with guests that way. Communicate with your vendors and service partners as far in advance as possible. They're all dealing with the same things that we're dealing with. So your obviously your food and beverage vendors, your beer distributors, any sort of services that you've cut out as far as, mats, towels, preventative maintenances, refrigeration contracts, those sort of things. If you haven't been open and operating, you are not using those services, and you're not the only one. So a lot of the restaurants that they're servicing haven't been using them either. They've laid people off as well. They've reduced their workforce as well, and they're trying to survive as well. So if you can give them as much of a heads up as possible, that way they can properly plan and coordinate their people so that they can be ready to service you again. That's really, really key and really, really critical. As far as the guest is concerned, the guests want a as normal as possible hospitality experience with added health and safety measures. And the best way to add those health and safety measures is through the PA promise. The guests that are coming out generally are very, very understanding. They understand that their favorite menu item might not be on the menu anymore. They understand that they're going to have to wait a little bit longer. They generally speaking understand that staffing is not the same as it used to be. So if you communicate with them, they see the health and the safety procedures in place. They're very, very happy to be out and very, very happy to be eating in a real restaurant with real plates and real silverware, as long as we're making them feel safe. That's pretty much what we've learned through this process. Other than that, I'm gonna turn it over to Mike with just some thoughts on keeping your team motivated, making it fun for them, making your team members love what they're doing still, love being in the hospitality business. It actually tends to be a little bit easier. Yes, it is a little bit more complicated with the health and safety procedures, but because we put things in place like menu simplification and having them really focus on hospitality and health and safety and not focus on little details that might not necessarily matter to the guests or things that we didn't get credit from the guests from before, they're tending to like their jobs more, and they love taking care of our guests and they love serving great food. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Mike.
Wow, TJ, you did such a great job. I don't know what is left for me to say at this point. Great job. I also want to just thank Ralph and Evan and Phil for their contributions here. Quite a panel here today. A lot of great information was shared. Can everybody hear me, by the way? Okay, cool. I just want to thank the PRLA for all they have done here throughout this crisis. They've been a great resource to our group, as well as the National Restaurant Association and fellow restaurateurs in our markets. Everyone has really pulled together here and really have been working side by side. It's not about competition in this crisis. It's really about pulling together as an industry and trying to feed off of one another, share best practices, learn from one another, and try to get through this together. Everyone really has covered some really great things here. I'll talk a little bit more at a high level what we've done here at Lehigh Valley Restaurant Group. And it's really been about communication and transparency. From the very beginning of this crisis, we've pulled together as a team. Every day we've had daily conference calls with our executive team, and then also with our regional operations directors, and then our frontline managers and our GMs. We've been nimble. We've been thinking outside the box. We've been trying to think of ways that we can continue to drive revenue, channels that we never thought of before. I know a lot of what was discussed here on this call was to leverage your vendor partners, and Sysco and EcoLab are great partners, but let me take it a step further on technology. Whatever your POS provider is, whether it's Aloha or Micros or Level Up, or a lot of the new ones that are out there like Toast, they've been really great with their technology enhancements for touchless payment systems, for online ordering capabilities. You really have to leverage technology in today's world of post-COVID, with trying to get your guests to order online, to having contactless payment, and third-party delivery integrations. It's really, there's a lot coming at you when it comes to figuring these things out. So I encourage you to leverage your vendor partners, your POS partners. Other things to consider when reopening, whether you're in the yellow phase or the green phase. I've seen a lot of innovation happening out there. We're also doing some really cool things, but you know, if you're thinking about putting a tent out in your parking lot, or if you're thinking about just putting tables and chairs on your sidewalks or in your parking lot, if you're not your own landlord, you definitely need to talk to your landlord. You definitely should check with the local township and ordinances. TJ talked a little bit about if you have a liquor license that you want to leverage the new liquor law extensions. You want to visit the PRLA website for instructions on how to do that, and then go to the PLCB Loop Net portal to file for that extension, which is free of charge and it's temporary. It's a very easy process to leverage. You know, social media is very important. I know that was talked about earlier. You definitely want to get the word out there. Make sure that your website is up to date, that your Google ads are up to date with your hours of operation. Right now, for the last 10 or 12 weeks, we've been operating with limited hours, not our normal operating hours. Streamline menus, making sure you simplify your operation. There's definitely a lot of complexity now with making sure that you're following health and safety standards. Layering in a complex business model could be very problematic for you. The other thing too is, I know most of you know this already, that you needed to deal with your banks and your landlords in the very beginning of this crisis. But now that we're going 3 months, maybe even 4 months into this crisis, and we're just starting to slowly open, we're not out of the weeds yet. Make sure you keep those communications going with your banks and your landlords and your vendor partners on payment terms and extending payment terms, and you know what your plans are to get yourself back on your feet. Obviously, when you're reopening, you're going to need some operating capital. Hopefully you took advantage of the PPP loans. Some of you that maybe got them later on in the game now have the advantage of having the 24 weeks of the PPP loan. I would highly encourage you to take full advantage of that. We took advantage of that early on in the very first week, and we just finished our 8-week clock and utilized all of our funds. So we don't have the luxury of the 24 weeks. But the one thing I'll say that really worked to our advantage is that we used that money exactly for what it was meant for, which was the Paycheck Protection Program. We got that money into the hands of our employees, and it's been a lot easier to get them to come back to work. I know that that's been a big challenge for a lot of operators, is getting folks to come back to work because the unemployment benefits are more robust. Utilize those funds, get your people back on their payroll, pay them well, pay them incentives or a little bit of a higher rate to get them back on and working so that you can open your business. Just be transparent with them and let them know that these incentives are temporary, or there's a temporary incentive pay because you took advantage of the PPP loan. And that once that runs out, you know, whatever arrangements you make with them will change. We have been fortunate to really retain a very large percentage, I would say in the greater 90 percentile of how many people stayed on board with us throughout this entire crisis, and how many now are coming back as we are opening our doors either for outdoor dining or in the green phase, and have been very engaged with us. Ben, I know you asked earlier about menu pricing. TJ touched upon that a little bit. I would say that there really is no need to communicate with your guests. I think it's a little tacky when you start hanging signs on your door saying, we're raising our prices because the price of beef went up, or we're raising our prices because the price of tomatoes have gone up. You know, those are ebbs and flows. I think that one thing that we have done very well is that once a quarter, we're always evaluating and reprinting menus, and we make slight adjustments here and there. You never want to take, you know, huge adjustments. Less more often is really a great approach. I know that sometimes operators are afraid to take menu prices, and they'll wait 3, 4, or 5 years before they take a menu price increase, and then they're taking 5 and 6 and 7% hikes at once. Those are noticeable. If you take very small menu price increases more often, they're less noticeable. And the best thing you can do is provide great quality, great service, and a clean atmosphere, and price doesn't become an issue. It really is about quality and service and cleanliness. Ben, any other questions for me?
No, that answered it, Mike. Thank you very much.
Great.
Well, we're right up. I mean, we are right at 4:30. We are right on the hour. You guys were all perfect, and I really appreciate your time. This webinar will be available to not only our members, but to the whole hospitality community. We'll be sending it out on our update tomorrow, and it's going to be available on all of our social media platforms over the next few days and coming weeks. So I just want to thank all of you for your time, and we're here at PRLA.org if anybody needs us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you, panelists. Great job.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Great job, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.